All right, hello everyone. Welcome to Disaggregating Canvas SLO data to identify equity gaps. My name is Thomas Cullen. I am the co-SLO coordinator for our campus and the program review coordinator. My fellow presenters are going to introduce themselves and then we'll get started.
Hi everyone, my name is Keith Donovan and I am the co-SLO coordinator at Irvine Valley College. I'm also a member of the chemistry faculty at Irvine Valley College.
Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Lauren Alano, and I am the Research and Planning Analyst at Irvine Valley College. So just to begin, we'll do an overview of the agenda. Thank you all for joining us this morning. We just want to give you a start where we're headed in this presentation. So just to get a sense of who's in the room with us today and what your experiences are on your campus in terms of conducting SLOs, we will start with a poll, and then we will talk a little bit about why it's so important to disaggregate SLO data. And then we'll talk about kind of the benefits of disaggregating SLO data and how we've done so at IVC and how it's been useful in terms of our teaching and learning and student success. And then we'll talk about IVC's SLO process in more detail. So just to begin, there's a few ways to participate in the poll. The first way is you can access the poll on your computer by opening up a web browser and going to pollev.com/Greatland481. And then once we open up the poll, you'll be able to kind of select your responses there. You can also participate by texting Greatland481 to 22333, and you can just text your responses if you feel more comfortable doing it that way. And then the final way to participate is to just kind of take a photo of that QR code on your screen, and then you can access the poll on your smartphone's web browser. So I will go into the poll. I'll give you a couple of seconds to choose your method of participation, and then we'll move right along. Okay, so again, just a reminder, if you just joined us, you can join the poll with one of the methods at the top. But oops, I think I was muted. Sorry. So yeah, you can join the poll at the top, and then we'll give you a couple of seconds to answer. Does your campus regularly use Canvas for instruction? And that looks like the overwhelming majority of folks in the room do use Canvas for instruction. Only about 8% of people don't. So we'll move on to our next question. Does your capture SLO data using Canvas? So we'll give folks a couple more seconds to respond. It looks like most people do, but we're actually getting more no's. So it's about almost half and half. Let's see if one more comes. Yes, about half and half. So half of the folks use Canvas, and I'm assuming that other folks use some other method. And so we can kind of discuss in the discussion at the end, but we're excited to share with you how we use Canvas at our campus to capture SLO data. And so the final question is, on a scale of 1 to 5, how much data disaggregation or how much disaggregation of SLO data occurs on your campus? Scale of 1 to 5, 1 being nothing, we don't disaggregate at all, 5 being everything is disaggregated and we have many subgroups. Couple more seconds. So it sounds like we got a range. You know, some folks are disaggregating everything and some folks don't disaggregate at all. So it's great to see that there's some experience with disaggregating SLO data, and we'll hope to hear more at the end during the discussion. But thank you so much for participating in our poll. Let's go back to the presentation. All right. Sorry. So now we'll move into kind of why it's so important to disaggregate SLO data.
Awesome. So welcome again, everyone. Really appreciate having you guys here. So in terms of why disaggregating SLO data, we've identified kind of three main aspects that we think are important in disaggregating SLO data. So number one, it can support campus-wide equity initiatives. So we have a lot of interest right now as a campus of supporting kind of all of our diversity, equity, and inclusion programs throughout the campus. Now, a lot of those I think rely on having useful data to be able to say, okay, why or who do we target? What are the sort of equity groups we need to support? And we decided to use SLO data as an opportunity to look at some of those things. It also helps to improve our faculty visibility of learning gaps. I know from my personal instruction, when we grade things, I don't always have the information on the back end of certain subpopulations in my class of how are they doing on assignments. So you can get a general idea behind it, but I'm of the opinion that more data is usually better in order to try to kind of, zoom in a little bit on things. And then last but not least, there is that whole standards requirement. Thank you. There's the whole required by ACCJC standards in order to have, gosh, I can't remember the standard number, but I think you guys know that it is one of the standards for disaggregating data. So moving forward, I kind of want to present a case study of some data that came out of chemistry. Now, looking at the case study that came out of chemistry, we have a rather robust program review Tableau dashboard to look at success rates. Now, looking at this is based upon the SPAR rate. So that was the fact that students either completed their degree, transferred, obtained 60 units, or are transfer prepared. Looking at this data over time, I really hope people can point something out in chat. If you look at this is straight pure data from our chemistry program. What do you guys see? Anybody want to type it into chat? What sort of things just pop out at you? So looking at this is success rate for different subgroups. And there are definitely some trending down that we see in some of these aspects. That's something that we were concerned about. But some of this trending down is separated out by our ethnicity equity groups that we also have here. And what we noticed as a chemistry department is the fact that we have a lot of disproportionate impact and success for our Hispanic and our Latino students. Fundamentally, there is a gap there that has been identified, and now we need to try to figure out, okay, how can we start closing some of these equity gaps? I feel like a lot of people are at this same position. How do you start closing the equity gaps? Numbers have been suppressed if they're low enough at our college. So as a result, that's the answer to that question in chat. So looking at this, we have kind of an issue here. How do you start targeting once these equity gaps have been identified? Do we take what we consider as kind of a shotgun approach, which was just, hey, let's throw every support that we possibly can have at the wall and see what sticks? Or are we more interested in taking a targeted approach? We found that this larger data set, things that you look at typically for guided pathways, are usually lagging indicators, right? They are things that happen after the fact that we do want to see go up, but we also want to have a little bit more targeting to say, what can we do in our classroom next semester or right now to try to get some improvement? So because of this, what we have decided here at IVC is that we are going to ask, what are the skills that we're not developing in our students that could lead to their lack of success overall? And in order to identify what those skills we're not developing that's where we really want to use Canvas and the disaggregation of Canvas collected data to be able to target skills and figure out which subgroups need support in specific skills. So we've developed a process to start working towards that we hope to share here. And with that in mind, we want to start leading into the process of how do we actually do that here at IVC. And for that step, we're going to hand it over to my fellow co-coordinator who is here on my screen, Thomas, and he's going to help you out.
All right, so our SLO process at IVC follows a number of steps throughout the whole thing. And we follow the same cyclical circle of SLOs that I'm sure we're all very familiar with. In this presentation, we're going to be primarily focusing on how we assess SLOs in Canvas, and then how do we analyze those results and maybe break it down at student subgroup levels. So our SLO process starts actually in Meta. We use Meta as kind of our sole source of truth for our course level SLOs. So when I don't know what's going on. When we have a change in our SLOs, we prompt a approval process through Meta, which then brings in the SLO committee on campus. Yes, CurricuNet Meta is the same, to answer the question in the chat. So with Meta, we have an approval process. It brings Keith and I in as the co-coordinators of the SLO task force or committee on campus. And when that happens, we basically have representatives from almost every school on campus, so humanities, physical sciences, and so on. And those representatives then make whatever changes occurred in Meta in Canvas. The goal here is that we have the same information in the different areas we have SLOs stored for our campuses, SLOs and their courses. All right, so once they are changed in Canvas, our old SLOs in Canvas, because Canvas doesn't let you delete SLOs, we move them into a retired SLO folder. So SLOs that are no longer being used in courses, we move them into a different area in our kind of background of Canvas folders. Then, once we have gotten all the SLOs that we need in Canvas for a given course, the instructors are going to import those SLOs, or outcomes as Canvas calls them, into their Canvas course shells. There we go. This allows, they're structured in the back end. Okay. There we go. Sorry. The back end has it all structured at different hierarchical levels so that when we pull the data on the back end, it's easy to export. If we have multiple sections of a given course, like my fellow co-coordinator, I am a chemist. So in Chem 1A, we offer generally like 14 to 15 sections a semester. If we have a number of different instructors teaching the same course, we usually create a kind of faculty resource shell in Canvas where we can do all of the importing of the SLOs into it. And then we add all our faculty that are teaching that course into that Canvas shell. They can then import material out of that shell into their Canvas course shells. Next, the instructors will create an assignment, right, in Canvas. And we have two major ways that we can assess outcomes in Canvas, using either a rubric attached to an assignment in Canvas that has the SLOs linked within that rubric, or by using classic quizzes. We can actually link SLOs to specific question banks within a classic quiz, and then that data can be pulled. Again, if we have multiple sections of one course, usually all these assignments and rubrics are created within like a faculty resource Canvas shell. We add the instructors to it. They can then just import those assignments directly into their Canvas courses, and they don't have to build it. This is specifically beneficial for our part-time faculty. So we can add them, and all they have to do is import the assignment with the rubric into their Canvas course to assess it. Once the assignments are created, we have to give them to the students, right? We have to assign it to the students. And if we're using a rubric, when you grade it, it's pretty much the same as usual. You might need to use SpeedGrader in terms of being different from normal stuff, but all you have to do is assign, click whatever button they scored, 4, 5, 6, whatever your rubric is. We can set it so that the rubric is part of the grade or not part of the grade. So it's very easy to kind of customize this to how a faculty feels about whether they want the grade to be part of the assignment or not for SLOs. After all the instructors have given the assignment and graded it, that data is automatically collected on the back end. And at this point, I'm going to hand it off to Lauren to talk about how we get that data and then analyze it.
Great, thanks so much, Thomas. So once instructors have been able to tie their SLOs to their assignments and grade the assignments normally, on the research end, we're able to ingest that data from Canvas. And so for those of you who in the poll indicated that you use Canvas for instruction, but not yet for SLO assessment or not for SLO assessment, I just wanted to note here that the CCC Chancellor's Data Warehouse stores Canvas data in case you don't already have access. And that's something that you can talk to your researchers or your IT department about how to set up. But what we're able to do on the research end of things is pull in that student level course data. And what's nice about Canvas is that there is a student SIS ID field that we can then merge other student level data that we have in our data warehouse to that Canvas data. So in research, what we're really doing is we're taking the Canvas data and merging in student level demographic information that comes from our data warehouse. And on our campus, as Keith kind of mentioned earlier, we're really interested in disaggregating by student level characteristics like race and ethnicity, gender, EOPS status, reentry status, foster youth status, and something that we've added recently since our campus is particularly interested in addressing equity gaps between first gen and non-first gen students is first generation status. So in research, we kind of create this final data set with the student level information, the demographics, the course that they're in, their SLO scores, and we're able to feed that data into Tableau where we can visualize mastery rates and add filters to disaggregate by student group. And at our office, one thing that we've been able to do in research is automate the process using Task Scheduler in Windows. And so what happens is every Saturday morning at 8 a.m., Canvas data is refreshed and pulled into our database, and we merge in our demographic data, and then we write that combined data table into our data warehouse on this weekly basis. And then our Tableau dashboard then references the combined data set. And so it's also then refreshed weekly. So if there's more questions about that process or what goes into it, or if anyone's curious, I'm happy to talk in more detail during the Q&A. But I think what's more interesting is getting to see what the dashboards actually look like and how they can be used by our faculty. So once that data is ingested into the data dashboard, our faculty can then, or instructors can identify skills gaps in their courses based on some of the equity groups that I mentioned. And so I'll go over some of the main views and how they can be used. The first thing that I do want to note is at the top of our dashboard, we have filters, and the dashboard view, or the initial view that I'm going to show, is really designed to show mastery rates for one course at a time. So it wouldn't really make sense to compare writing one's SLO1 to accounting one's SLO1, right? So instructors are asked to kind of select the term, their division, department, and program, and the specific course that they're interested in. And then they can select the subgroup by which they want to disaggregate. So on this particular slide, you can see the mastery rates for accounting 1B, and we're just going to focus on SLO1 right now. So we can see that there's no subgroup selected, so we can see that the overall mastery rate for SLO1 is about 83.7%. So of all the students in the course, 83.7 of them mastered SLO1. But if we're interested in disaggregating, we can select another subgroup, and here I've selected ethnicity. And we can see that for the same SLO1, while the overall mastery rate was 83.7. Not all groups are, achieving mastery at the same rate. And so I apologize for the subtitles that are at the bottom, but you'll see the orange is the Asian subgroup. So they're kind of achieving mastery at a higher rate than the overall average for the course. And you can see that for Hispanic students in red, only about 2/3 of the students in the course are achieving mastery. So that's definitely an equity gap or a skills gap that would have been obscured had we not disaggregated the findings. So in addition to that view, we also have a historical view, and we can view trends across the course historically. So what you'll see here is for our Writing 1 course, we have different, from fall 2017 to spring 2021, we have the mastery rates listed, disaggregated here by first gen and non-first gen groups. And so we can see how mastery rates are changing over time. And this view was really designed to help faculty monitor trends and assess the impact of new pedagogical practices or curricular changes. And I see a question in the chat about how mastery is defined here, and mastery is defined within Canvas for the relevant outcomes. So it could be mastery, it could, however they define it in Canvas, that's how we define mastery in this particular dashboard. So these are our two of the main views in the dashboards and how we can disaggregate them and how they're helpful. And I will pass it on to Keith to talk more about what happens after faculty look at that.
All right, thank you. Yeah. So before I get there, I just want to tackle one question that I saw inside of the chat, which was the question about, do we see faculty pushback about not wanting to have faculty, all faculty to be able to see SLO data? So the SLO data doesn't have any faculty names tied to it. As you can see, it was based on courses. Of course, for some courses, if you only have a single instructor, you may run into those issues. As a whole, we haven't experienced too much pushback other than general pushback against SLOs overall. I noticed in the keynote instruction section, one of the comments that said was, hey, people just think of SLOs as being a common, problem that an add-on that people have to do. We've had that same complaint in our school also. And as a result, I think we aren't getting more complaints than that complaint. So this is the people that were already on board are on board. We've started to convert some people because they can see how useful it is. And then based upon how useful it is, maybe we're starting to get more and more. We're not at 100% everyone being happy with SLOs, but if your school is 100% happy with SLOs, please tell me how you did that. I would absolutely love to know how we can do that, because we're trying our best here. And I think, we're speaking to various people that probably have the exact same, experiences that we have, or at least very similar experiences. So where I want to move to here is then, what do we do once you have the SLO results, right? So we have our data disaggregated. It's been collected through Canvas. The collection has kind of worked out fairly well for us in terms of collecting through data Canvas. From there, you start analyzing the data in Tableau, and then we still have to say, okay, let's look at that data, figure out what sort of changes we want to make, and then report on those changes to kind of meet part of the requirements for accreditation and what have you. So the way that we've worked on this is all course level SLO data reporting is actually done through a Microsoft Forms report. The Microsoft Forms, it turns out, is fairly flexible in terms of what our needs were for setting it up. When you start to set up forms, we've basically developed a drop-down form that it goes through every single question that we want to have answered for the SLO results. So the drop-down form has been more user-friendly than our previous methods of entering in SLO results. I will say it's easier for our part-time faculty, definitely, to use. It's also easier for data entry overall if you have multiple sections that are kind of bringing things together. Inside of these forms, you drop down to select your course that you're entering your results in, and you just answer some simple basic questions, which is, what are the main findings that you're interested in? right? We have a little bit about what sort of follow-up from any previous SLO analysis you have here. And then also, what are the action plans that you want to generate and start working towards? So it really, going to this kind of web-based form has been a lot easier for us. I will say we've gotten more faculty positive notes about moving to this than just about any other change that we've made. Now, once we have the forms data, that forms data on the back end links to a SharePoint table. And that SharePoint table then is accessible to our research department to develop our Tableau dashboards to be able to actually view those results. So we have a Tableau dashboard that can then sort and view all of the results for anything that you've entered. It's really hard to see here, and I apologize for that. But this is like what chemistry entered in for our 1A results. What are the major findings? What are some previous curricular changes we had? And then what are some new curricular changes? What's nice about this is it's all very easily sortable. You can pop up and see any semester that you're interested in, all of the data that we've entered before. One of the things that we were struggling with, and this may have been a unique problem to our school, and if it isn't, please let me know. If you guys already had great solutions for this, I would like to know also. Treat this as I'm showing you what we're doing, and then I really want to steal ideas from you guys too, please. So thinking about this, our scheduling system and our SLO systems never actually talked to one another. So we had issues where knowing if SLO results were not entered because somebody just forgot to do SLO results for their system or for their courses, or the courses haven't been offered in a while and we just didn't know that. And that's why SLO results were missing. So our new Tableau dashboards are able to actually track completion based upon our course schedule. So you can actually get you can get a view of which courses are actually missing SLO assessments for any given semester or any given year, depending upon how you want to break down the data. And this has been really useful for department chairs, especially, to be able to come back to our faculty and say, hey, you know, as a faculty-driven process, have you started looking at the results of your SLO assessments? Did you do any changes for this? And please, can you then enter the changes to make sure that we are keeping up with our normal cycle of reporting and SLO assessments? So this has been really helpful for us. Now, I wanted to bring us back just briefly to thinking about that first problem that we presented at the beginning. And that first problem was our chemistry case study. So if you remember in our chemistry case study at the beginning of this, we have the issue of, okay, there was a disproportionate impact in our students, specifically our Hispanic and Latino students, in their completion of our program. So how can we then, instead of taking a broad approach, kind of narrow in on what skills we would like to develop a little bit more strongly? To do this, let's look at the overall SLO results data. So we decided to go to our first semester general chemistry course, like the intro course to our program. And we looked at 5 fundamental skills that should be developed in the first semester. And of those 5 skills, we can look at that mastery rate charts. So as you can see, in terms of naming it, we have units, we have grams and moles, we have nomenclature, stoichiometry, balancing equations. And this is that first view that Lauren had presented previously. In that first view, you can only see just the overall aggregate results. So looking at this data, which is what we previously kind of had available to us before we started using Canvas, you could say, okay, well, we got some issues. Only 70% roughly of our students are successfully mastering SLO number 1. And the other ones were doing pretty good. We're close to 80% or above for all of our other data. And that would have been, okay, great. So for number 1, what do we actually do here? You do extra worksheets. You try to figure out how to increase units overall. But now what we actually have the ability to do is say, well, what's hidden inside of that data that maybe will give us a little bit extra information to target specific groups that need assistance. And when you start breaking this down based upon ethnic demographics, what we can see is that there's actually a larger than anticipated disparity, specifically in our units, SLO number 1, and our nomenclature, SLO number 3. So this now starts to say, okay, well, wait, those two, our Hispanic and Latino students are 13% lower in terms of their total mastery over SLO number 1 and SLO number 3 than the average. Well, great. This gives us an idea. Do we have to take the approach that we really want to strengthen balancing chemical equations specifically for everybody? No, it looks like we're doing a pretty good job in balancing chemical equations across all demographics. But now we have at least a better idea. Okay, we need to offer support for our Hispanic and Latino students in these specific skills, our units and our SLO number 1 and our SLO number 3 nomenclature. So at this point, at specific times in the class, we know when we can use embedded tutoring as one possible support. So we embed support into some curricular changes that we can make, bring in embedded tutors during these sections to try to actually increase or help out our students at specific times where it looks like they need the most help. And then later we're trying to figure out, okay, well, how else can we support the students? We have a good idea now of what we're targeting. Now let's actually start developing some of these sort of supports that they need. The other thing that I really like about this data, and I'm assuming that it's similar at other colleges, is that we can use disaggregated SLO data to justify and provide evidence for our budgetary requests through our normal budgeting processes. So our normal budgeting processes suggest that your SLO data should tie into your program review should tie into our budgeting, and that really is kind of that link that we are going through. So using our SLO data, we have now an extra tool to support, hey, we need funding to target these specific things. We have the data that's tied to it that shows there's the need. Please provide the funding so that we can then close some of these gaps and kind of shrink some of these needs. So with that, we really wanted to allow a robust time to have a Q&A session and really talk through with everybody, if they're interested, how do you use SLO data at your college? Can you see this being useful? And what sort of changes do you think we all could make here at IVC or Irvine Valley College? What could you implement at your school? I really wanted to talk together about all of these things. So with that, we ask, hey, do you guys have questions? What can we help? How do we help you? How can you help us? Let's discuss this. And feel free to unmute yourselves if you guys would like to talk, please, or type it into chat. Nancy, please.
So, this might be a little bit off base since this is really about using data from Canvas, but I just wonder, I've been thinking about this since you started with the data about the showing the disproportionate impact, and then we looked at the SLO data. And I'm wondering if you at some point also do anything where you focus group with the students or get any feedback from the students about what their experience is and where they feel like they might be struggling. So it's not just all about where we think you have a problem, but also can you tell us where the struggle is and how this data maybe helps you do that too?
Nancy, yeah, so I can answer that question. Through guided pathways, we have completion teams for our schools. And so one of the things I'm a chemist as well, so in physical sciences, one of the things our guided pathways completion team is looking at is surveying the students and getting feedback exactly like what you're talking about, to see where our programs within physical sciences are lacking in terms of student support and how we can actually best help our students. So that's one way we're kind of handling that kind of qualitative data gathering from the students themselves. I don't know, I hope that helps answer that question.
Yeah, and just to add on a little bit, as an institutional researcher, I'm on a lot of the guided pathways completion teams. And so we often look at that program review data at the beginning to identify the equity gaps. And then we try to dig a little deeper. And so another one of our groups for our business sciences team identified equity gaps for first generation and re-entry students, or students who are over 25. That's how it's defined at our campus. And so we've done focus groups with these student populations. So, I think some of these dashboards help identify areas where further research needs to be done. And we are also incorporating some qualitative data as well.
Awesome. So I want to take a step real quick and tackle a question that was in chat. Karen asked about how did you get faculty on board to use Canvas for outcomes assessment? What professional development was provided? So in terms of getting faculty on board, I will say that it's definitely a struggle in specifically courses that have fewer sections, or let's say single instructor courses. We've gotten a lot of buy-in on courses that have a large number of sections and a large number of part-time faculty instructors in those sections. One of the hardest problems that we had, at least at our college, was tracking down the data from part-time faculty instructors in order to try to collect SLO results, analyze those results, and then actually act on those results. So in this case, using Canvas, what we were able to show is that if you are, let's say, a course coordinator for a course that has multiple sections inside of it, what we can do is have you create your assessment with your assessment that has the outcomes loaded onto the assessment and the rubric loaded into the assessment. If the part-time faculty just import that assignment and the outcomes and the rubric, and we have a nice email that's like, hey, here's how you do it. And they just have to assign that assignment in their course shell. So in their Canvas course shell. Just through that assignment, all of the data collection then becomes automatic on the back end, and there's no more sending out emails. We had, 15 adjuncts in our Chem 1A, at one point. There's no more sending out emails to all 15 trying to track down that data. Instead, all of that is automatically collected on the back end. And showing that benefit was probably the most useful thing in getting our faculty to start supporting this process. It's, hey, we are making this easier for something that used to be a manual type in, get, hey, where is your SLO data? Send. You don't hear anything for 2 weeks. Where is your SLO? Send. We were trying to work that. So that was the most useful method that we had to getting a lot of those large sections involved. We're still working on trying to get complete everybody that's a small section involved. So if you have a single instructor teaching one course, we're trying to show the benefits, but we are getting a little bit of, that's still a problem area for us, to be quite honest with it. It's hit or miss where people are going. As far as professional development goes, we have an entire professional development week leading up to our semester. So I know a lot of people have professional development days. We have a full week. We offer every flex week is what we call it, 1 to 2 to 3 drop-in sessions. I have visited every school meeting, every single one through our college, and done a professional development with them on this is how we do it to get it all set up. And then we've worked a lot with one-on-one individual instructors trying to get this set up. We're not saying this is an easy process necessarily. Once you get it rolling, it becomes easier because as you copy over your Canvas course shells, those assignments and those SLO linkings come with them. So if you set it up once and you want to assess, let's say, the same or similar SLOs the next semester, all it takes is copying over the course shell. You don't have to spend the time setting up the assignments again. And showing the instructors that they can save time there has also really been useful to us. So those are kind of the ways we've tried to gently encourage instructors to move towards this. And really, like I said, large section, we've been getting really good responses from them.
Thanks, Keith. I had a follow-up question then. Do you also offer related workshops on designing rubrics or designing authentic learning assignments?
Yeah, so At this point, not through the SLO committee, which I know seems a little bit strange that we're not the ones. There are other professional development opportunities that have worked with how to design a rubric for that. We were at the stage of trying to get everybody, let's start using the process. So this has been over the last couple, I don't know, 2-3 years that we've been trying to get people, slowly but surely to use the process. And then we build out better rubrics as they have started using the actual process itself.
Thank you.
Awesome. I'm trying to catch up on chat. Do we have other questions, or have you guys already been answering in the chat?
I've been answering some, but I think I might have missed one or two.
Awesome. Does anybody else have any pressing questions that they would like to ask about this? Well, if not, we have some contact information that is available here. Lauren is an absolutely wonderful researcher who has been helping us out so much with all of this back-end stuff with Tableau. For myself and Thomas, we've been really the face of interacting with the faculty, trying to get them to start using the process, showing them the use of it. And then we've been working on the reporting side of things a lot too, getting faculty finding out where the pain points are in the reporting of SLOs and trying to ease those pain points as best as we can. So if you have any questions about that, we'd be happy to talk about any of these processes with you. And otherwise, I'd like to thank you guys all for coming. We will finish this session out a little bit early so you guys can go, grab something to eat or grab a drink before the next session starts. So thank you all for coming very much. We really appreciate you guys showing up here today.